The morning sun cast long shadows over the dusty streets of Empire City, Nevada, as Sarah Mitchell clutched her feverish baby tighter to her chest. The year was 1876, and in this unforgiving frontier town, survival required more than just grit. It required money, something Sarah had precious little of since her husband's passing 3 months prior. Her son William, barely 8 months old, had developed a persistent cough that had worsened over the past week, his tiny body now burning with fever. The bell above Dr. Holloway's office door jingled as Sarah pushed it open, stepping into the cool interior that smelled of antiseptic and herbs. The doctor, a kindly man with graying temples who had delivered William, looked up from his ledger. "Sarah," he said softly, rising from his chair, "I've been expecting you. How's the little one today?" "No better, doctor." "Holloway," Sarah replied, her voice cracking as she unwrapped the blanket to reveal William's flushed face. "He barely slept last night. The fever won't break." Dr. Holloway examined the child with gentle hands, his expression growing more concerned as he listened to the baby's labored breathing. After several minutes, he straightened up with a sigh. "It's pneumonia, Sarah. He needs medicine, and quickly." Sarah's heart plummeted. "What kind of medicine? How much will it cost?" The doctor walked to his medicine cabinet, unlocking it with a small key he kept on a chain around his neck. "I've received a shipment of a new compound from San Francisco. It's shown remarkable results with respiratory infections." He retrieved a dark amber bottle. "This is what William needs." "And the cost?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer would be more than she could afford. $20 for the full treatment," Dr. Holloway said apologetically. Sarah's legs nearly gave way. $20 might as well have been 200. Since Thomas had died in the mine collapse, she'd barely managed to pay for food by taking in laundry and mending. "Dr. Holloway, I don't." She began, her voice faltering. "I wish I could help more, Sarah," he said, genuine regret in his eyes. "But I had to pay $40 for each bottle. I'm already cutting my price for you." Sarah nodded numbly, clutching William closer as tears filled her eyes. "I understand. Thank you for seeing us." She turned toward the door, desperation clawing at her chest. "Sarah," the doctor called after her, "that baby needs medicine within the next day or two. Don't wait too long." Outside on the wooden boardwalk, the reality of her situation crashed down upon her. William gave a pitiful cough, his little body shuddering against her. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks as she looked around the bustling Main Street, wondering where to turn. The general store loomed ahead. Perhaps Mr. Jenkins would extend her more credit, though she already owed him for last month's flour and sugar. With no other option, she walked toward it, each step heavier than the last. The store was busy with midday customers, miners' wives stocking up on supplies, a couple of ranch hands examining tools, and several well-dressed women discussing fabric patterns. Sarah approached the counter where Mr. Jenkins was tallying a customer's purchases. When he finished, she stepped forward, shifting William in her arms. "Mr. Jenkins, I need help. William is very sick, and Dr. Holloway says he needs medicine that costs $20. The storekeeper's sympathetic expression quickly hardened. "Mrs. Mitchell, I wish I could help, but you haven't settled your account from last month. Business is business, and I can't extend any more credit." Sarah felt the room spin slightly. "Please," she whispered, "my baby will die without this medicine." "I'm sorry for your troubles," Mr. Jenkins replied, not unkindly but firmly, "but I have my own family to feed." She nodded, understanding his position even as desperation mounted within her. As she turned away, William began to cough violently, his tiny face contorting with the effort. Several customers looked over, some with pity, others with discomfort. "I can't pay for my baby's medicine," she cried. the words escaping before she could stop them, her voice breaking as she sank onto a nearby bench. The store fell quiet except for William's wheezing. Sarah felt exposed, humiliated, but too desperate to care. Then a shadow fell across her, and she looked up to see a tall stranger standing before her. He wore dusty riding clothes and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his features. His boots were worn but well kept, and the gun belt at his hip spoke of a man accustomed to the dangers of the frontier. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, intense blue eyes that regarded her with unexpected gentleness. Without a word, the man reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. He counted out several gold coins and placed them in her hand. $25, he said, his voice deep and quiet. Get your baby what he needs. Sarah stared at the money in disbelief. Sir, I can't possibly. You can, he interrupted firmly, and you will. That little one needs it more than I do. But Sarah struggled to find words. How will I ever repay you? A slight smile crossed his weathered face. Seeing that child healthy again will be payment enough. He touched the brim of his hat respectfully. Zachary Mercer, madam, just arrived in town. Sarah Mitchell, she managed, still stunned by his generosity. This is William, my husband. He passed away in the mine collapse this spring. Something flickered in Zachary's eyes, compassion, perhaps, or understanding. I'm sorry to hear that, Mrs. Mitchell. Now you'd best get that medicine. Sarah clutched the coins tightly. Thank you, Mr. Mercer. I don't know what else to say. Nothing more needs saying. He stepped back, preparing to leave. Good day to you, madam. Wait, Sarah called as he turned away. Where are you staying? When I can. When things improve, I'd like to repay your kindness. Zachary hesitated. The Silverton Hotel for now, but please don't trouble yourself about the money. Sarah watched him leave, this stranger who had just given her what appeared to be his entire savings. She looked down at the gold coins in her palm, then at her son's feverish face. There was no time to waste. She hurried back to Dr. Holloway's office, the coins clutched tightly in her hand. The doctor looked surprised to see her return so quickly. I have the money, she said breathlessly, placing the coins on his desk. Please, the medicine for William, doctor. Holloway's eyebrows rose slightly, but he asked no questions as he counted the money and prepared the medicine, explaining carefully how to administer it to the baby. Give him 5 drops every 4 hours. Keep him warm but not overheated. Make sure he drinks plenty of fluids. Come back in 2 days so I can check his progress. Sarah nodded, absorbing every instruction. Thank you, doctor. You're welcome, Sarah, and whoever helped you today has my respect. As Sarah walked home to her small, rented room at the back of the milliner's shop, her mind kept returning to the tall cowboy with the kind blue eyes. Who was Zachary Mercer? What brought him to Empire City? And why would he give his savings to a stranger? William seemed more comfortable already after his first dose of medicine, drifting into a peaceful sleep for the first time in days. Sarah sat by his cradle, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest, thinking about the mysterious cowboy who had saved her son's life. The next morning, Sarah woke to find William's fever significantly reduced. His breathing was easier, and he even managed a small smile when she tickled his belly. Relief flooded through her, bringing fresh tears to her eyes, tears of gratitude this time. After feeding William and giving him his medicine, Sarah made a decision. She would find Zachary Mercer and at least properly thank him. She changed into her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had faded with washing, but was still presentable, and arranged her hair neatly, before wrapping William in a clean blanket. The Silverton Hotel stood at the corner of Main Street and Silver Avenue, its 2 stories making it one of the tallest buildings in Empire City. It catered mostly to businessmen and travelers passing through on their way to larger cities like Virginia City or Carson City. Sarah hesitated at the entrance, suddenly feeling out of place. This was not an establishment she frequented, and she was acutely aware of her worn shoes and mended dress. But the memory of William's labored breathing steeled her resolve. She pushed open the door and approached the front desk. "Good morning," she said to the clerk, a thin man with spectacles. "I'm looking for Mr. Zachary Mercer. I believe he's staying here." The clerk consulted his register. "Mr. Mercer is in room 204, madam. Would you like me to send word up?" "Yes, please." "Tell him Sarah Mitchell would like to speak with him if he's available." The clerk dispatched a young boy with the message, and Sarah waited in the small lobby, gently rocking William, who was looking around with curious eyes. A few minutes later, Zachary appeared at the top of the stairs. He wore a clean white shirt tucked into dark trousers, his hat absent to reveal thick dark hair with a slight wave. Recognition lit his face when he saw Sarah, and he descended the stairs with a long, easy stride. "Mrs. Mitchell," he greeted her, his voice as warm as she remembered. "How is the little one today?" "Much improved, thanks to you," Sarah replied, her voice thick with emotion. "The medicine is working wonders already. I wanted to thank you properly and to ask why you would do such a thing for strangers." Zachary gestured to a pair of chairs by the window. "May I?" Sarah nodded, and they sat facing each other, William cradled in her lap. "I was raised to believe that we're put on this earth to help one another when we can," Zachary said simply. "Your need was greater than mine." "But it must have been all your money," Sarah protested. A slight smile crossed his face. "Not all, but a fair portion. I'll manage. Are you passing through Empire City or staying?" Sarah found herself curious about this man who had shown such extraordinary kindness. "I came to meet with the manager of the Silver Baron mine. I'm a mining engineer by training. After what happened in Virginia City with the Comstock mines, many operations are looking to improve safety." Sarah's heart skipped. "My husband was killed in a collapse at that very mine." Zachary's expression grew solemn. "I'm truly sorry, Mrs. Mitchell." "That's exactly the sort of tragedy I hope to prevent in the future." "Then your work is important," she said softly. "Thomas always said the support timbers weren't adequate, but the foreman wouldn't listen." Zachary nodded grimly. "That's all too common, unfortunately. Mine owners focus on quick profits, not safety." William began to fuss, and Sarah bounced him gently. "I should get him home for his next dose of medicine. But please, Mr. Mercer, I insist on repaying you when I can. I take in laundry and do mending work. It may take time, but Mrs. Mitchell," Zachary interrupted gently, "please don't concern yourself with repayment." "At least let me thank you properly," Sarah persisted. "Would you join us for supper tomorrow? It won't be fancy, but it's the least I can do." Zachary seemed about to refuse, then smiled. "I'd be honored, Mrs. Mitchell." "Sarah, please," she said, surprising herself with the informality. "Sarah," he repeated, and the way he said her name sent an unexpected warmth through her. "And I'm Zach to my friends." She rose, adjusting William in her arms. "Until tomorrow then, Zach, 6 o'clock. I live behind Madame Lawrence Millinery." "I'll be there," he promised, standing as she prepared to leave. He hesitated, then added, "May I?" gesturing toward William. Sarah nodded, and Zachary gently touched the baby's cheek with one finger. William grabbed it with his tiny hand, causing Zachary to chuckle. "Strong grip. He'll be a fine young man someday." As Sarah walked home, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced since before Thomas's death. William was healing, and somehow she felt as though other wounds might be healing too. The next evening, Sarah prepared a simple but hearty meal: rabbit stew with vegetables from her small garden, fresh bread she'd baked that morning, and apple pie using fruit she'd preserved last fall. She wore her blue dress again, having carefully pressed it, and even pinned a small brooch her mother's at her collar. William, continuing to improve, sat contentedly in his cradle, occasionally babbling to himself. Sarah checked her small mirror one last time, tucking a stray strand of honey-brown hair back into its neat arrangement, then chided herself for her nervousness. This was merely a thank-you dinner for a kind stranger, nothing more. Yet when a knock came at precisely 6 o'clock, her heart quickened. She opened the door to find Zachary standing there, hat in hand, wearing a clean shirt and jacket. He held a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Good evening, Sarah," he said, his eyes crinkling warmly at the corners. "Something smells wonderful." "Just a simple stew," she replied, stepping aside to let him enter her modest dwelling. It consisted of 2 rooms, a combination kitchen and sitting area, and a small bedroom she shared with William. Everything was clean and neat if worn with use. "For William," Zachary said, offering the package. "It's not much." Sarah unwrapped it to find a small wooden horse, beautifully carved with remarkable detail. "Did you make this?" she asked, running her fingers over the smooth surface. Zachary nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "Whittling passes the time on long rides." "It's beautiful," Sarah said sincerely, placing it where William could see it from his cradle. The baby immediately reached for it, gurgling with delight. "He loves it already." They settled at her small table and Sarah served the stew. As they ate, she found herself sharing stories about her life growing up in Missouri, meeting Thomas when he came through her town with a cattle drive, their decision to seek fortune in the Nevada silver boom. "We had such dreams," she said wistfully. Thomas was going to save enough to buy land, start a ranch, something safer than mining. "And you?" Zachary asked. "What were your dreams?" The question caught her off guard. Few had ever asked what she wanted. "A home of our own," she said after a moment. "Children playing in a yard, a garden." "Security." She looked down. "Simple things, I suppose." "Not simple at all," Zachary replied. "Those are the things that matter most." Encouraged by his interest, Sarah found herself asking about his own life. Zachary spoke of growing up in Pennsylvania, his father a blacksmith who had saved to send him to school in Philadelphia, where he studied engineering. He'd worked in coal mines back east before heading west after the Civil War. "I served with the Union Army," he explained. "After seeing so much death, I wanted work that would save lives, not take them." "Is that why you became a mining engineer?" "Partly. I saw too many men die in poorly constructed tunnels, and I had a knack for understanding how earth and rock behave under pressure." He paused, taking a bite of pie. "This is delicious, by the way." "Thank you," Sarah smiled. "My mother's recipe." As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed easily from topic to topic. Zachary spoke of his travels across the West, and Sarah found herself laughing for the first time in months at his tales of misadventures on the frontier. When William began to fuss, Zachary watched with evident admiration as Sarah tended to him, giving him his medicine and rocking him gently back to sleep. "You're a wonderful mother," he said softly. Sarah felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "He's all I have left of Thomas. I'd do anything for him." "I saw that yesterday in the store," Zachary said. "Your love for him was plain as day. That's why I couldn't just walk past." As the evening drew to a close, Sarah found herself reluctant to see it end. There was something about Zachary's presence that made her feel safe, respected, seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. At the door, Zachary lingered, seeming equally reluctant to leave. "Thank you for a wonderful evening, Sarah. Best meal I've had in years." "Thank you for coming," she replied, "and for everything else." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, and Sarah felt a flutter in her chest that both alarmed and excited her. "How long will you be in Empire City?" she asked, suddenly needing to know. "At least a few weeks. The mine owners have asked me to conduct a thorough assessment and make recommendations." He hesitated. "Would it be too forward to ask if I might call on you again?" Sarah knew the proper response would be to decline, to maintain a respectable period of mourning. Yet the words that came out were, "I'd like that very much." Zachary's smile was worth any social impropriety. "Until then, Sarah Mitchell." He touched the brim of his hat and stepped out into the evening. Sarah closed the door, leaning against it for a moment as she processed the evening. William stirred in his cradle, and she went to him, touching his forehead. The fever was completely gone now. "What an unexpected turn our lives have taken, little one," she whispered to her sleeping son. "What an unexpected turn indeed." Over the next 2 weeks, Zachary became a regular visitor at Sarah's home. He would stop by in the evenings after his work at the mine, sometimes bringing small gifts, a jar of honey from the general store, a ribbon for her hair, another carved toy for William. On Sundays, they began taking walks together, William bundled in Sarah's arms or sometimes carried by Zachary, whose strong hands seemed to have a natural knack with the baby. Empire City took notice. Sarah overheard whispers at the market, saw the raised eyebrows when Zachary tipped his hat to her on the street. A widow entertaining a gentleman caller so soon after her husband's death was fodder for gossip. But for perhaps the first time in her life, Sarah found she didn't care what others thought. There was nothing improper in their friendship, after all. Zachary was unfailingly respectful, never staying too late, always maintaining a proper distance when they sat together. Yet she couldn't deny the growing connection between them, the way her pulse quickened when he appeared at her door, the warmth that spread through her when he smiled. One evening, about 3 weeks after their first dinner together, Zachary arrived looking troubled. He declined her offer of coffee, pacing her small sitting room instead. "What is it?" Sarah asked, alarmed by his demeanor. "Has something happened at the mine?" "In a manner of speaking," he replied, finally sitting down across from her. "I've completed my assessment, and it's worse than I feared. The support structures throughout the lower tunnels are completely inadequate. Another collapse is almost inevitable unless major changes are made." "And the mine owners, will they make the changes?" Zachary's expression darkened. "Randall, the mine manager, claims they can't afford the improvements I've recommended, says it would cut too deeply into profits." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Men's lives are at stake, including those of miners who have families depending on them, just as your husband did." Sarah reached out impulsively, covering his hand with hers. It was the first time she had initiated such contact, and she felt Zachary tense momentarily before turning his hand to clasp hers. "What will you do?" she asked softly. "I've written to the territorial governor, outlining my concerns. But miners have little political influence and mine owners have plenty." He squeezed her hand gently. "There's more, Sarah. With my assessment complete, there's no reason for me to remain in Empire City." Sarah felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. "You're leaving." "I've received an offer to consult at a mine in Colorado." He hesitated, his blue eyes searching her face. "Unless I have a reason to stay." The moment stretched between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Sarah withdrew her hand, her thoughts in turmoil. Was he suggesting what she thought he was? "Zach," she began carefully, "we've known each other such a short time." "I know," he acknowledged, "and I know it's too soon after your husband's passing. I would never disrespect his memory or rush you into anything. But Sarah—" He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "In 3 weeks, I've come to care for you and William more than I thought possible. I can't bear the thought of leaving you behind." Sarah's heart pounded. Part of her wanted to throw caution to the winds, to tell him she felt the same inexplicable connection. But another part, the practical part that had learned the hard way how precarious life could be, held her back. "I need time, Zach," she said finally. "This is all so unexpected." He nodded, disappointment flashing in his eyes before he masked it. "Of course. Forgive me for speaking so boldly." He stood, reaching for his hat. "I should go." "When would you leave for Colorado?" Sarah asked, rising as well. "The end of next week if I decide to accept the offer." A week. She had a week to sort through her conflicted feelings, to decide whether to risk her heart again so soon. "Good night, Sarah," Zachary said softly, moving toward the door. "Good night," she replied, watching him go with an ache in her chest. That night, Sarah lay awake long after William had fallen asleep, her mind turning over the day's revelations. The thought of Zachary leaving brought a pain she hadn't expected. In just 3 weeks, he had become important to her, his steady presence, his gentle way with William, the way he listened to her as though her thoughts truly mattered. Was it disloyal to Thomas to feel this way? Or would he have wanted her to find happiness again, to secure a future for their son? The next morning brought news that pushed her personal dilemma temporarily aside. A breathless neighbor knocked on her door just after dawn. "There's been another accident at the Silver Baron," the woman said, her face pale. 3 men trapped by a cave-in." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Is anyone hurt?" "Don't know yet. They're trying to reach them now." The woman hesitated. "Your gentleman friend, the engineer, he's down there helping with the rescue." Sarah barely registered the gentleman friend comment. "Zachary is in the mine." Fear clutched at her heart. "Heard he volunteered to go down. Said he knew the tunnels better than anyone after his survey work." Sarah immediately wrapped William in a blanket and hurried toward the mine, joining the crowd of anxious onlookers, mostly women and children waiting for news of husbands and fathers. The scene was hauntingly familiar to the day Thomas had died, and Sarah felt sick with dread. Hours passed with little news. William grew fussy, and a miner's wife offered to take him back to her home where he could nap properly. Reluctantly, Sarah accepted, knowing the mine was no place for a baby, but unable to leave while Zachary's fate remained unknown. It was late afternoon when a shout went up from the mine entrance. Men began emerging from the tunnel, covered in dust and soot. Sarah strained to see, searching desperately for Zachary's tall figure among them. Finally, she spotted him, helping to carry an injured miner on a makeshift stretcher. Relief washed over her so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. He was alive. Once the injured men were safely handed over to Dr. Holloway and his assistant, Zachary looked up and saw her standing at the edge of the crowd. He made his way to her, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, his shirt torn at the shoulder. "Sarah," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "What are you doing here?" Instead of answering, Sarah threw her arms around him, heedless of the dirt and the watching crowd. She felt him stiffen in surprise before his arms encircled her, holding her tightly against him. "I was so afraid," she whispered against his chest, "when I heard you were down there." "I'm all right," he assured her, his voice rumbling under her ear. "We got all 3 men out alive, though Jenkins has a broken leg." Sarah pulled back slightly to look up at him, suddenly aware of their public embrace and the many eyes upon them. But in that moment, she didn't care about propriety or gossip. The realization that she might have lost Zachary before she'd even acknowledged her feelings for him had clarified everything. "Don't go to Colorado," she said softly, for his ears alone. "Stay in Empire City. Stay with us." Zachary's eyes widened, searching her face. "Sarah, are you certain? Yesterday you said you needed time." Seeing you come out of that mine alive was all the time I needed." She took a deep breath. "I know it hasn't been long since Thomas died. I know people will talk, but life is too short and too uncertain to deny what I feel." A slow smile spread across Zachary's face, transforming it despite the grime. "And what is it you feel, Sarah Mitchell?" "That I'm falling in love with you, Zachary Mercer," she replied, her voice steady despite the enormity of the admission. "That William adores you. That the thought of you leaving tears me apart inside." Zachary glanced around at the curious onlookers, then back at Sarah. "This isn't the place for this conversation. Where's William?" "With Mrs. Cooper. She offered to watch him while I waited for news." "Let's retrieve him, and then we need to talk properly." He offered her his arm, which she took without hesitation. They walked through town together, ignoring the stares and whispers. After collecting William from Mrs. Cooper with thanks, they returned to Sarah's home as the sun began to set. Once inside, Zachary washed the worst of the mine dust from his face and hands while Sarah settled William, who was sleepy after his eventful day. When they finally sat down together, Zachary took both her hands in his. "Before you say anything else, there's something you should know," he said seriously. "After our conversation yesterday, I turned down the Colorado position this morning before the accident." "You did?" Sarah was surprised. "But I thought I couldn't leave, Sarah. Even without any promise from you, I couldn't bear to go. I was planning to find work locally, perhaps start a consulting business for mines throughout the territory." He squeezed her hands gently. "I've traveled enough. It's time to put down roots." "With us?" Sarah asked softly. "If you'll have me." He shifted slightly, his expression growing more serious. "Sarah, I know it's soon, and I know there will be talk, but I love you. I think I started falling in love with you the moment I saw you in that store, holding William and showing more courage than most men I've known." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I never expected to feel this way again, especially so soon. After Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over. I had William, and that would be enough." She looked down at their joined hands. "Then you came along and handed a stranger your savings, and somehow wormed your way into our lives and our hearts." Zachary released one of her hands to gently lift her chin, making her meet his gaze. "I'm not trying to replace Thomas. I know he'll always have a place in your heart and in William's life." "I know that," Sarah assured him, "and that's one of the reasons I love you." The word hung between them, a bridge rather than a barrier. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Zachary leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a tender kiss. Sarah responded, her heart racing as she allowed herself this new beginning. When they separated, Zachary's eyes were bright with emotion. "I should go before the hour grows too late." "People are talking enough already." Sarah nodded reluctantly. "What happens now?" Zachary stood, keeping hold of her hand. "Now, if you're truly certain about your feelings, I'd like to court you properly, and when an appropriate time has passed." He hesitated. "Yes." Sarah prompted, her pulse quickening. "When the time is right, I'd like to ask you to be my wife." He said it simply, without grand declarations or flourishes, just the steady certainty that had drawn her to him from the beginning. "I'd like that," Sarah replied, equally simply. "Very much." The following month saw a transformation in Sarah's life that sometimes left her breathless. True to his word, Zachary courted her with respectful devotion, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, but making his intentions clear to everyone in Empire City. He found work consulting for mines throughout the territory, making Empire City his base. The territorial governor, responding to his detailed report on the Silver Baron mine's conditions, sent inspectors who ordered the safety improvements Zachary had recommended, despite the owner's protests. William thrived, growing stronger each day. He started crawling, then pulling himself up to stand, always reaching for Za, as he called Zachary, who delighted in the baby's every new accomplishment as though William were his own son. As autumn turned to winter, Zachary found a small house for rent on the outskirts of town, nothing fancy, but solid and warm, with a proper yard and room for a garden come spring. When he showed it to Sarah, she knew it was his way of showing her he was serious about building a future together. Christmas approached, bringing with it snow that transformed Empire City into a wonderland of white. On Christmas Eve, Zachary joined Sarah and William for a special dinner. The baby, now nearly 15 months old, was walking unsteadily and babbling a growing vocabulary of words. After dinner, as William played with the wooden animals Zachary had carved for him, Zachary pulled a small package from his pocket. "Merry Christmas, Sarah," he said, handing it to her. Inside was a delicate silver locket. When she opened it, she found a tiny photograph of William on one side, the other side empty. "For our future," Zachary explained, "whatever that may hold." Sarah touched the locket tenderly. "It's beautiful, thank you." Zachary took a deep breath. "Sarah, it's been 6 months since I first saw you in Jenkins' store. 6 months of getting to know you and William, of falling more deeply in love with both of you each day." He reached for her hand. "I know some might still say it's too soon after Thomas, but I can't wait any longer to ask. Will you marry me?" Sarah's eyes filled with happy tears. "Yes, Zachary. Yes, I will marry you." His face lit up with joy as he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that promised a lifetime of love. They were married on New Year's Day of 1877 in a small ceremony at the town church. William, dressed in his best clothes, sat contentedly in Dr. Holloway's lap, occasionally calling out "Mama" and "Za" during the service, causing ripples of laughter among the guests. Many in town had come to respect Zachary for his work improving mine safety, and Sarah for her quiet dignity in the face of earlier gossip. Even Mr. Jenkins, who had once refused her credit, presented them with a fine set of dishes as a wedding gift. After the ceremony, they moved into the house Zachary had rented, which he was already making arrangements to purchase. That first night in their new home, with William asleep in his own room for the first time, Sarah and Zachary consummated their marriage with tender passion, each discovery a revelation, each touch a promise. Spring brought new beginnings. Sarah planted the garden she had always dreamed of, while Zachary built a sturdy fence around the yard for William's safety. The little boy grew more adventurous daily, exploring his world with fearless curiosity, secure in the love of both his mother and the man he was coming to think of as his father. In April, Sarah discovered she was expecting a child. When she told Zachary, his face reflected such profound joy and wonder that any lingering doubts she might have harbored about their swift courtship and marriage vanished completely. "A brother or sister for William," he said in awe, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our family is growing." "Our family," Sarah repeated, loving the sound of those words. "I never thought I'd have this again, Zach. After Thomas died, I was just trying to survive each day." "Life has a way of surprising us," he replied, drawing her close. That day in the store, I'd nearly decided not to stop in Empire City at all. I was considering riding straight through to Carson City. "What made you stop?" he smiled, touching her cheek. "Fate, maybe, or perhaps I was just hungry after a long ride. Either way, it led me to you and William, and I'm grateful every day." As summer progressed, Sarah's pregnancy advanced without complications. William, now approaching his second birthday, was fascinated by the changes in his mother's body. patting her growing belly and listening with wide eyes when Zachary explained that a baby was growing inside. Zachary's consulting business flourished, his reputation for both expertise and integrity spreading throughout Nevada and into neighboring territories. He was often sought out by mine owners and territorial officials alike, but he carefully limited his travel, refusing to be away from Sarah and William for more than a few days at a time. In November, as the first snow dusted Empire City, Sarah went into labor. Dr. Holloway attended her at their home, while a nervous Zachary paced in the next room, entertaining William with stories to distract himself from his worry. After 6 hours of labor, mercifully shorter than her experience with William, Sarah delivered a healthy baby boy. Zachary, called in to meet his son, wept unashamedly as he held the tiny infant. "He's perfect," he whispered, sitting beside Sarah on the bed. "Just like his mother." They named him Benjamin Thomas Mercer, honoring both Zachary's father Benjamin and Sarah's first husband. William, allowed to see his mother and new brother, approached the bed cautiously. "Baby?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder. "Yes, William," Sarah smiled tiredly. "This is your brother Benjamin." "Ben," William declared firmly, reaching out a gentle finger to touch the baby's hand. Zachary lifted William onto the bed so he could see better. "What do you think, partner? Think we can handle another boy around here?" William nodded solemnly. "My brother," he announced, and Sarah and Zachary exchanged glances over his head, their hearts full. The following years brought both challenges and joys to the Mercer family. Zachary's reputation as a mining engineer continued to grow, eventually allowing them to build a larger home on the edge of town, with ample room for their expanding family. Benjamin was joined by a sister, Emma, in 1879, and another brother, Joseph, in 1881. William grew into a thoughtful, responsible boy who showed an early aptitude for engineering like his adoptive father. Though he knew the story of his birth father, Sarah, and Zachary had always been honest with him, he considered Zachary his true father in every way that mattered. In 1885, nearly 10 years after that fateful day in Jenkins' store, Sarah stood on the porch of their home, watching Zachary teaching William and Benjamin how to properly saddle a horse. Emma sat on the bottom step, her doll forgotten as she observed her brothers with envy, while 4-year-old Joseph played contentedly with a set of wooden blocks at Sarah's feet. At 32, Sarah had a few strands of silver beginning to thread through her honey-brown hair, and the past decade had added some laugh lines around her eyes. But she had never felt more beautiful than when Zachary looked at her with the same love and desire he had shown from the beginning of their marriage. As though sensing her thoughts, Zachary looked up from his lesson and caught her eye across the yard. The smile he sent her way still had the power to quicken her pulse. Later that evening, with the children asleep, Sarah and Zachary sat together on the porch swing, watching as stars appeared in the darkening sky. His arm was around her shoulders, her head resting comfortably against him in the easy intimacy of long marriage. "You ever think about that day we met?" Sarah asked, her voice soft in the gathering twilight. "Often," Zachary replied, his hand moving in slow circles on her shoulder. "How could I not? It changed everything." $25, Sarah mused. "All your savings at the time, you told me later." "Best investment I ever made," Zachary chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Look what it bought me: a beautiful wife, 4 amazing children, a home filled with love." "And to think I was worried about how I would ever repay you," Sarah laughed softly. "Oh, you've repaid me 1,000 times over," he assured her, turning to kiss her properly. When they separated, he added more seriously, "You know, I've never once regretted it, not for a single moment." "Nor have I," Sarah replied, reaching up to touch his face, tracing the familiar lines with tender fingers. "Every day I thank God that you walked into that store when you did." "Providence," Zachary suggested, "or just extraordinarily good luck." "Either way," Sarah said, settling back against him as the first stars winked to life above Empire City. "I'm grateful." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled fully around them. Two people who had found each other against the odds, whose lives had been forever changed by a single act of kindness on a dusty afternoon in the wild Nevada territory. In the years to come, their children would often beg to hear the story of how their parents met, how a desperate young widow couldn't afford medicine for her baby, and how a kind-hearted cowboy had handed her his savings without hesitation. It became family legend, a testament to the power of compassion and the unexpected ways that love can find us when we least expect it. And whenever Zachary told the story, he always ended it the same way. "It was the best $25 I ever spent." To which Sarah would invariably reply, with love shining in her eyes, "And the most precious gift I ever received."